This is a seminar that we've series that we started way back at the beginning of the pandemic, back in early March, and it's really taken off as a way of helping uHIT users really learn about the ways that a phone app translates to the field, about the ways that we customize training to an individual player's strengths and weaknesses at zone and pitch recognition. And what we do with the uHIT Academy series, what we really like to focus on is talking about issues related to pitch recognition, not specifically uHIT itself. And so tonight's topic is going to be looking at player development, particularly at the professional level. So we were introduced to Hal and to Brendan over at X10 sometime last year, I think. And we were really intrigued by the innovative work they're doing with player development there. And so we wanted to bring them into the discussion tonight, learn a bit about how they're working with their players, and talk about some of the various tools that are out there in the cognitive training space when it comes to hitting, and then kind of some related topics to that. So where I want to begin, though, is to learn a little bit more about what X10 is, how it's really looking at player development from a different perspective. And so I'll open it up to you, Hal, and then you, Brendan, to learn a little bit more about that for our audience tonight.
Sure. So X10 is a private equity fund, and we make equity investments in professional athletes. In our first fund, baseball and football. So we have partnered with quite a few big league players, pitchers and position players. So once we have partnered with players, our incentives are completely aligned, and we want to help them however we can to have more productive careers and to have longer careers. And Brendan, he oversees all the development with our baseball players. So he is constantly vetting any and all technologies in the space, among other things. He is investigating quite a few things. I could let Brendan comment on that.
Okay, great. Brendan?
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for having us, Jason. Yeah, so on the back end development side, after we were able to do a deal with the player, it's really it's different than the traditional development system that is with a major league team. These are guys that have already broken through the major leagues, had some success, and really have kind of proven themselves. So our development is more about a player support system, and we're not getting into deals with guys that need a total overhaul of their swing. So we're trying to, as Hal said, improve around the margins that are going to help them play better this year, and put the tools in place that are going to get them to 10, 12, 15 years down the way, whether that's their preparation, whether that's their recovery, their training, because it's on this side of the game now, after being done with their career, we can advise them of how the league's going to adjust to them, how they're going to pitch them differently, how your body's going to change, how you're going to be struggle to recover on the backside of 30 in a different way than you did when you were 25. So just helping them and bringing them tools and resources that can help them be successful is the crux of what we can do. And then as I said, not only is Hal an extensive network, but obviously he's a career 300 hitter, World Series, champ. And so, as I said, we're not investing in guys who need swing overhauls, but we're here as a resource when they come to us and say, hey, is there anything if they want to talk hitting and ask us anything, we're here to discuss with them. But we're not, as opposed to a team that's going to kind of work from the top down and say, you need to do this or do that.
Right. So it's more like when one of your players will look for kind of a supplement, something. Not, I don't mean like a medical supplement, but I mean like something supplemental to their training that can give them a little bit more longevity, a little more of a plus up on competition, and basically the idea is that either maintains their value or increases their value, kind of like as an asset that any fund would hold. Is that right?
Absolutely. Like any startup with an asset that needs growth capital, is a way to look at it. And it's incredibly competitive. There's a lot of little boys playing little league in the U.S. and in the Dominican and in the Pacific Rim. So a lot of times it's just these 1% adjustments can be the difference from going from good to great, or going from 6 to 8 years to 10 to 12 years, and can really mean a lot of money for a guy in his life.
Right. And from the, I mean, obviously uHIT's coming from the perspective of pitch recognition, kind of the cognitive side of things. In the experience that you've seen so far in terms of like working with players, it sounds like the physical side, physical recovery, the kinesthetic side really still dominates in hitting, and that pitch recognition, something like uHIT or some other products out there do, is something that's in that supplement category today, is possibly one of these kind of tools that you have on hand for your players, but again, it's not a top-down kind of approach like you would have in an organization. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, you see hitting coaches sometimes kind of want to bang their head against the wall. They're like, "Oh, I've been working with this guy hitting. Well, maybe that the swing isn't the problem. Maybe he's not picking it up early. Maybe there's something where, out of the hand, he's not recognizing early enough. There's certain parts of the zone that he doesn't pick up well. There's certain pitches. There's certain, and so I think pairing the two, and certainly with, I'm sure we'll get into it, the premium velocity that guys are throwing now, and in over the last 10 to 15 years, obviously the value on base percentage and controlling the zone with teams. And so I think it's become more than just a supplement, being able to recognize pitches and control the zone effectively.
Yeah, and I would argue that pitch recognition, throughout the course of a season, is as important, if not more important, than anything else that you're navigating. You have mechanical issues you have to kind of triage, but when you're swinging the bat well, the ball looks like it's about this big, and when you're struggling, it's a fraction of that size, and it's typically mechanically related. But when you're seeing the ball well, you're an entirely, it's like Jekyll and Hyde. You're a different hitter.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny you say that, because pitch recognition being so important during the season is something to kind of like surgically kind of work on. But one of the things is great about something like uHIT is we get to see when players use it a lot, and when they kind of fall away. And interestingly, on the amateur young youth level, there's a lot of use of it in off-season, training season, right? Then when the season hits, it's like it doesn't exist, right? And I mean, so like right now actually is kind of a lull in terms of hitters using at the youth level. I mean, in high school and college, using something like uHIT. They were crushing it during the training season. There is one team though who did maintain it consistently through the season, at least this time around, and they've only lost 4 games out of 40 in their conference, in their season. And so we're seeing those kind of results speak for ourselves, and also that it lines up with kind of the wisdom side of things in terms of your experience, Hal, that getting batting practice is one thing. You're swinging the bat, you're getting reps, but you're never going to see meatballs from 50 feet in front of the home plate coming at you. The background may be exactly like what you'll see in the game, but everything else is different. And so that's one of the things that we've worked on a lot with the players that we've started with in training season, is to carry that habit forward into the actual season, so that it's not just like oh man, I got to re-engineer my swing in the middle of the season kind of reaction. It's I got to re-engineer how I'm seeing the ball, so that I'm seeing it more like a beach ball and less like a pebble. Yeah, I think that's a very neat point, that you brought up, Hal. And I think from the point of view of the shutdown, really, and players trying to start back up again this season. Now the minor league camp is mostly going on, and they'll be starting their season pretty soon. What have you seen in terms of players, kind of like ability to get it back after being gone for so long and not getting those kind of visual reps with the bat in hand, and then which players did some kind of visual training stuff in the off season and which didn't, and kind of what's the mix look like on you guys' end right now?
I think looking around the league, I think you would say the pitching's ahead of the hitting. There's a number of factors. Spring training, there's just you're not getting consistently the quality of pitching that once the season hits, that you're going to see day in and day out. You might draw a number one, number two starter in spring training, but then the back end of the bullpen will come in. You'll be able to get a knock or two. You feel good about yourself. And so I think in kind of referencing the point you were saying, I think consistency is in part of the routine, and in getting these reps, and whether it's spring training or the shutdown, and just mentally having a feel for the timing of it. You're never going to recreate, even when they do live BP, it's just not the same. So you're never going to recreate, but the quicker your brain can be accustomed to making a decision in a short amount of time, I think the better you're going to be. So as much as differentiated practice as you want to do, which is great, and I think it all helps, and this neural priming and getting the brain ready is going to be incredibly helpful. But I think considering it was a short year, it was a choppy year last year, and then it was for the most part regular spring training. But I still think the hitting is going to be much behind the pitching for another probably 2 to 3 weeks here.
And I think the guys that were out for a considerable period of time last year, in the abbreviated season, they essentially missed an entire year. I think that it's kind of a steeper curve for those guys. It might take them another month or 6 weeks.
Right. And particularly even with minor league players, I know you guys are mostly working with, major league level players, but particularly for those minor league players who were expecting to jump a level this year, right? Or last year, I should say, jump a level. And now they're either at the same spot or, but their body's a year older. That's a factor I know we've definitely interacted with players we've seen. In terms of the timing aspect from just like you were talking about, like live BP, Brendan, what kind of difference do you guys see for like, training the eyes with like just passive viewing? Like, I want to see what, how this pitcher delivers. So you look at some tape of a game. I know, when we worked with the Pirates, there were guys going on YouTube to look at opposing pitchers, wind up and release, and just get a feel for a pitcher. But that kind of passive viewing versus like actively having to decide in the moment, either whether bat in hand or with a remote or with a click on the screen, how do those two things differ for you? Is passive viewing the same thing as having to react and and move in that moment, or is it something completely different for you guys?
I would think, so the more viewing, you're talking more like active with VR, like more of a VR type thing if you're holding the bat, or with uHIT and holding the bat. I think
or even just having to tap the screen, that even level of active, rather than just like, I'm going to sit back and kind of sit on my couch and just watch, right? Just watch some pitches from a game. But any kind of need to like, watch and then move, whether it's with a swing or a tap or a button click, kind of those.
I was going to say, even if it's just a tap, you have to react somehow physically. And I think that's good enough to be able to get something out of it. And like I said, prime your brain for at least making decisions in that amount of time that you would with a 90+ mile an hour fastball coming in. So I think there's benefit to it. Yeah. Just just that, especially as you get into like your first AB, I feel like you see that a lot in the minor leagues, which is going to be very interesting to see, how that plays out this year. But, guys not ready to hit their first at bat. And I think this is a very, very useful tool on that front, is that not throwing away that first at bat. And even from a team point of view, a lot of, the game sometimes you can see is won in the first inning or two. So I think it's incredibly important to a guy go into the game ready to hit.
Right.
Yeah, I think the more active the more active you are, I think the better off you're going to be as a hitter.
Mm-hmm. From the kind of like physical side, recovery side, do you see any difference really with for hitting development for tools that require you to actually swing when you're working on pitch recognition, and things where you're just working the eyes, so to speak, right? And you boil down your physical movement to a tap versus actually going through a swing. I mean, do you guys see any like difference in terms of like do guys just get too many hacks in the batting cage? Do they get too many hacks in practice? And is there any kind of element of that here that you think like maybe we'll be able to work on the the recognition side of things and having to move and affect the decision side without incurring the physical cost on the body of actually taking rips and and going through swings. Do you guys see anything like that these days?
Yeah, I think you can swing yourself into and swing yourself out of a slump.
Yeah.
And I when I was with the Angels, I remember talking with Peter Borges and Mark Trumbo, and it's like they used to say, when you're in a slump, you used to have to get there, hit early in the cage, hit early on the field, then do regular BP, and you feel good, but your swing count's at like 100. So then an hour and a half later, you're in the game and you're fatigued.
Yeah.
And you've been in mentally and physically. And so I think that you can overdo it, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree, Brendan. I think when you get into a slump, you swing so much that you actually it becomes like an out of body experience. You just feel so discombobulated. But I will give you some advice that Ted was handed down, and when I was playing for the Reds from Ted Klaczewski. Turn around and hit the other way. I would turn around and try to hit right-handed. I was a left-handed hitter. When I got really bad, I would hit right-handed for about 5 minutes, and then I was so happy to turn around and hit left-handed. But yeah, you can definitely swing too much, and that's one of the nice things about working on your tracking. You're not getting that same kind of wear and tear on your body,
Mm-hmm.
but you're still really sharpening your focus and your vision.
That's a great story, Hal, about the turning around to the other side of the plate. I mean, I hear a story like that and try to think about it from the neuroscience perspective, because, I mean, I don't know how many folks know who are watching this, but uHIT is something that originally started with measuring the brains of hitters as they're reacting to pitches, and measuring not just the electrical activity, telling us the timing of when a hitter recognizes a pitch, but also what parts of the brain have, fire in what sequence, so that when it looks like a beach ball and when it looks like a pebble is coming at you. And so hearing that story from your perspective about, when you're in a slump, you go to the other side of the plate, I would look at that from the neuro side and say, you want to have this integration of mind and body really with hitting, right? Where you're seeing, you're reacting, and then you're putting that into action, or, holding back your swing. And but when there's something broken in that chain, right, it's not going to help to keep doing that chain more and more, right? That's a slump. And that technique that you're describing there, Hal, you actually break the chain, right? Because you're looking at it a different way. You're doing a different type of physical movement. Like that whole sequence of your load and then your hands coming through is going to be completely different in terms of what parts of your brain are being used for that. So it's actually, I mean, I would describe it as like clearing out some cobwebs, so to speak, in the brain, where, you've built up these kind of like this system of whatever you were doing to recognize pitches, and in this case, not recognize them well, and then connecting that to whatever your physical sequence was. But there's something broken in that chain. So what you'll do is just like clear out some of those cobwebs, try a different chain. And then, when you go back to it, after those 5 hacks from the right side of the plate for you, you go back to the left side, you can kind of go back to this cleaned version of what you look for that's a relevant cue, and then what you do with your physical sequence. And I don't know what other techniques, I'm sure there are plenty of other techniques hitters would use to kind of get themselves out of a funk, but it's so hard for a hitter to know that when they're in it, and even for a coach to tell them it's not the same thing. I mean, one of the things that we try to do with uHIT is to, if a player is regularly using our custom training, what it will do is it will modulate up and down the amount of time they have to decide on pitches, right? So if you are, when you see it coming in as a beach ball, that's really you recognizing it so much faster than it's coming in. And particularly when it slows down, players talk about the game slowing down. The pitch is still going the same speed. It's just, where it's going to go. So it feels like it's slowed down. And what we do with in uHIT with our custom training, we have this kind of automated Coach Hewitt from uHIT. He guides you through, monitoring how quickly you're reacting to the pitches, and then either speeds up or slows down those pitches, or makes them harder or easier based on like how early they're giving away movement in the beginning. So it's a very different approach than there are a lot of tools, visual tools out there today that I think are aiming to recreate as much of the visual experience as possible with a few kind of like added graphics on top. But they're not giving that kind of necessary feedback all the time to tell you like, all right, we got to pull it down a little bit for you. Or we're going to challenge you a little bit now, and be able to monitor your slump status or your, hitting it like a beach ball status, and continue to push you in one direction or the other. So that's something that, we've seen develop really from the early stages of uHIT, when it was just, going to spring training with a EEG cap to measure brain activity and do assessments, to now an adaptive tool that adapts to you through a phone app. I want to switch gears a little bit. We do have some questions from the audience we're going to integrate here too. But in terms of getting players to work with new approaches, I'd like to hear kind of, some observations you guys have seen on that front. Do some of your players just like pick up a new thing right away? Is there a lot of resistance? I mean, can coaches watching this kind of either sympathize or think, oh, I wish I was working with my major league players? From your response, what are you guys seeing these days with that?
I'd say overall, especially, I think in general, once you get guys that get to the big leagues, have broken through, they can finally make their own decisions as it relates to their routine. So they're very hesitant to kind of arbitrarily do new things. They're always looking to optimize, I would say. Mm-hmm. But in terms of like, always kind of change up, their preparation. You do have some guys that, 0 for 4, they did, and day to day, they're willing to change things up. But I think overall, they're pretty hesitant to do those things. But at the same time, when presented in the right way, they're usually open to it, because they've gotten to this level by being able to make adjustments.
Right.
Yeah, and I think guys are more receptive to examining new technology, new modalities than they were when I was playing. I think that if you look around the league and you see the success stories that different players have had, using technology, I think that there is get more of an openness. When I was playing, guys would have been very reluctant, I think, but I think that's changing.
And how does one thing when we first started working in baseball, it was with major league players. I mean, it started, the first day was Gabe Kapler calling us up out of nowhere and saying, can you come to spring training next week? And so we were kind of thrown right in from the beginning like that. And it was coming from the organization. Like we were coming in as like with the organization. And so there was this different dynamic we noticed that you would have if you're working directly with a player. So can you speak a little bit about like that kind of like incentive structure for a player to try something new if it's coming from the organization who's his employer, right? Versus if it's coming from like, X10 or his agent or someone who's got, a built-in reason to improve his value rather than, deal him.
Well, I think in not all cases, but in some cases, I think there's probably more trust associated with the players, with their agents and their business advisors. It's just the nature of the relationship between the players and owners. It's an employer relationship. That's the reality. So at times there can be some apprehension, I think, but not always. I think sometimes it would be easier for say Brendan and me to approach guys and make a suggestion. But that being said, like I said, I think guys are a lot more open-minded to embracing technology, and even if it's coming from the clubs, because if they, players, they're observing everything. They're observing very keenly, and if they see that one of their teammates has benefited from using, some technology, they don't want to get left behind. So,
Yeah.
they're trust me, they're watching keenly.
Okay, I wanted to ask you about that because that actually touches on a question that we had written into us. This topic about like, a players kind of sharing these kinds of things. This was from Morris. He's a but that's his first name. He told us he's a pro, used to be pro, kind of semi-pro player, and from Chicago. He said when a player, he wrote into us on Twitter through DM, when a player finds success with something like uHIT, whatever it is, does he tend to share it with other players, or is it more like a closely guarded secret that a player would have to kind of find on their own? Like, what do you generally see in that?
I usually, even if he wants to kind of keep it close to the vest, somehow it does get out. And to Hal's point, the social proof of guys not wanting to get left behind is a real thing. And so even if they're hesitant on keeping it close to the vest, I think it does get out. And then some guys are more easy to kind of let things get out there and share their story than others.
Yeah, and I think guys, they have like-minded teammates, peers who they're constantly talking to. I remember when I was playing, I was talking to my buddies all the time, the guys I was playing with, in the various clubs, but also the guys I had played with before. And if they found something that was helping them, they would be very quick to let me know.
Mm-hmm.
But it tends to be the pitchers. There's a sorting issue with pitchers and hitters. That if the hitters have something that's benefiting them, they might not share with the pitchers. But that's just the nature of it.
Right. The I want to keep it on the topic of players who are he says aiming for pro ball. This is a question we got from Landon, and I don't know what level he's at, but it tells us in terms of category he's aiming to play pro ball, so maybe a college player. We have worked with a lot of colleges this last year through our partnership program, which has been a really great way to introduce uHIT to some some schools that apply to do a data sharing kind of arrangement with us, and some of them have continued either as teams or as players themselves. Landon writes, my hitting data goes to coaches all the time when I play tournaments, but I could have a bad day and then look bad. So how is the data managed for tournaments? He asked specifically with something like uHIT. I think this is more probably something in my wheelhouse. And do data from tournaments, I mean, he asked specifically here, does that go to coaches right away? Like, what his uHIT data is? I guess that'll probably be a question for me. But, from your guys' perspective, do you guys, get in-game data on a regular basis, whether it's like, trajectory data, hit data, things like that. Are you guys analyzing that on a regular basis? And then I'll address from the uHIT side after that.
Yeah, we're trying to monitor our guys and see trends and see if how they're being paid, and just to be ready if they come back to us. We're not going to be peppering our guys with, hey, your first pitch swing percentage is way down, for anything like that. But I think to Landon's question, I think it's important, if he has worried about either the recruiting process, the draft process, especially recruiting, is try to pair it with some video. I think the visual and the eye tests are still going to, the data and these numbers are support. I think the eye test and video are still going to be the things that coaches want to kind of look, see, touch, and feel to really commit to a guy. So not to get hung up with a bad tournament here and there.
Yeah, and we get that data updated on a daily basis. But from my perspective, so Brendan and I both scouted. I scouted for 8 years. I was the Angels pro scouting director for 5 years. When I look at that data, I want to watch our guys and figure out what's creating those outputs. Like what's going on mechanically. Why is he chasing these balls out of the zone? What exactly he's doing? So to Brendan's point about pairing the data with video. I think you need to look at both of them to understand exactly what's going on.
Mm-hmm. I guess that's actually an interesting segue to a question we had. It's from a college player, John in St. Louis, and he specifically asked about this kind of related topic because the eye test being so important is what triggered me on this. Because he says with pitch recognition being something that we talk about is so important. Do you think someone who excels at that skill, but is otherwise not a power hitter? I mean, it doesn't necessarily come across, I guess, as a strong hitter. Can he be successful at the professional level? I'm guessing presumably with like some other physical strength training or something like that added in there. If that skill, the pitch recognition skill, is showing so strongly, is that a possibility? Like tapping undervalued talent or something like that for you guys?
Yeah, I think people will look at the ability to develop strength and teach a guy to hit. And I think it's been moderately well publicized that in terms that Mookie Betts, when he was drafted by, is a premier athlete, but he's really not that big of a guy. But in terms of his there's a neuroscience related test that I think the Red Sox gave him. He scored off the charts and moved him way up their draft board. I still think he went to the 5th or 6th round, but there were things to the point that you're making that they thought they saw a good athlete. They saw maybe he was raw to a little bit, but they saw other things that kind of foreshadowed a major league talent and skill set.
And let me just say something about power real briefly. When I was coming up, I was drafted by the Yankees coming up through the Yankee system. I got a chance to work with some great hitting instructors and hitters, Don Mattingly, Lou Piniella, Chris Chambliss, all these guys. And the adage was basically, don't worry about learning how to pull the ball. As you get older and you get stronger, you're going to learn how to pull the ball more and drive the ball more. And truly, the typically the best hitters in baseball were inside-out hitters at one point in time, and then they eventually learned to pull the ball, to hit the ball up in the air. So when I was scouting, if I saw a guy with an inside-out swing that could really handle the bat cover of the plate, that's what really excited me, because I knew eventually he'll learn how to pull the ball, he'll learn to put the ball in the seat. So to this question, if you're tracking the ball well, you've got good plate recognition. We used to talk about Barry Larkins. You didn't get your man strength till you're 30 years old. So these, you're at 20, 21, you're still a young man, and your strength could come. So you absolutely could develop that kind of strength and the ability to drive the ball as you mature.
Right. I mean, I imagine, one thing that has been neat for us to see in, working with colleges, particularly in the partnership program, was we didn't want to just make it all about D1, right? We wanted to give some exposure to D2 and D3, and to see the kind of, like, if you are excelling at at a D1 school that's maybe not one of the strongest, or at a D2 school even, but you're not seeing the kind of competition in pitching wise that guys who go further up on the board in the draft would be seeing. How do you show that you're able to recognize at that level if you're not playing at that level, and could you get missed? I guess, I mean, I'm kind of doing the corollary off of I think it was John's question. Yeah, off of John's question. But like, how do you guys know if there is somebody out there or not? You know what I'm saying about that?
Oh, absolutely. And listen, it's a challenge.
Mhm.
That's a challenge. From an evaluating from that perspective, you're going to look at someone's hand speed. You're going to watch them take batting practice. I watched Andrew Benintendi when I was working for the Angels, and I saw him down in I think it was Salem, and watch him take batting practice. He squared up 19 out of 20 balls. This is BP, and Brendan could probably share with you. I would tell our guys, go in there and watch guys take batting practice, because when you're squaring up that many balls, even in BP, you have to have very good hand-eye coordination in order to do that. And what I could infer from watching that is that when someone's going to start to see some velo, he's probably going to be able to square up the ball as well as other guys. But that's something, you can watch a big league hitter take batting practice. They're hammering everything, and the good amateur hitters will do the same.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I think you develop yourself. You can only excel at the level you're playing or against the competition. So just do everything in your power and keep developing yourself physically, keep stacking quality at bats, and challenging yourself and having quality BP left and right, because I think teams are valuing there are trends within the game. Obviously, powers in controlling zone are valued, but with the premium velocity and these strikeouts, keep increasing. I think bat to ball skills are highly valuable. I remember a couple of years ago, Alex Cora, with the kind of fly ball revolution, was talking about, listen, we don't give ABs away when we get 2 strikes and just try to drop the anchor and drive. And he goes, we're still trying to put the ball in play. So I think there's always going to be a place for that in the game.
Yeah. Okay. There is one other question that we have. We're going to kind of start winding down in the next few minutes or so, but it is related to kind of what we do with uHIT. So what I wanted to do was shift gears for a second, show the audience kind of some aspects of what's in uHIT right now, because the question is related to training on the phone and like translating to the field. And so what I'm going to do to shift gears for a moment here is show everyone in the audience 2 things. One is how you get started with custom training with the assessment, and how there's this coach that takes you through that. Then we'll walk through a little bit of that to see how that begins for the zone recognition skill. And then we're going to switch gears briefly over to looking at what happens after you've finished your assessment when you begin your training. And we're going to snoop in on one of our favorite first Pirates players, Jared Oliva's account, to just take a look there. So with that, I'm going to just share the screen here, and we'll be able to see when you go into uHIT the first time. If you're doing custom training, you'll be brought to a screen that will walk you through like your assessment. And so this automated Coach Hewitt, will take a player through what to expect and kind of guide them through their assessment of their zone first, and then later their pitch recognition. So before any player does that, we want to show them, all right, what does that mean? How are we assessing your zone recognition? Because it's not so intuitive right away. to have to tap on the screen to tell, balls and strikes. So we have these tutorials that are built in there for the players so that, Coach Hewitt can walk them through like some sample pitches so they can see what it's like, how they take a pitch, how they swing at a pitch, etc. So what it'll do is explain that you're tapping for pitches in the strike zone. You think that's going to be in the zone, so you tap on the right side of the screen there. And afterwards, you get to see the result. So that's the time pressure aspect that we were talking about before, Brendan, particularly that we're asking players to respond, to react, to make a decision in the amount of time that they would have as that ball is coming in towards them. Afterwards, of course, you get the feedback about whether you were right on that. So, and the coach explains that to you. Now you can, replay that, or you can continue on. And now we'll look at a pitch and we'll see it come in and we'll tap again. Early movement, though, starts to look like it's going out of the zone, but he thinks it's a strike right now. So we'll see with the rest of the pitch. Now we see it's actually out of the zone, right? So that was actually incorrect. That was a ball, right? And so we get that negative feedback that was wrong. So that's the way, at least for swinging, so to speak, that we're teaching the player, all right, this is what we're doing to assess your zone recognition. And we could keep going with that tutorial with the example of taking a pitch, but we skip out of there right now. And you could just jump right into your assessment and start calling balls and strikes in this fashion, tapping for strikes or holding off and not tapping, as we did in that case. There was no tap. So after you go through several pitches, it's about 40 pitches or so, 30, 40 pitches, we get a quick baseline on you. And then what that allows us to do is it allows us to then tune how fast the pitches should be that you're seeing, how slow the pitches should be that you're seeing, how much early break they should have, etc. And so when you come back into uHIT after your assessment, you tell us whether you're again on the right hand or left side of the plate, and Coach Hewitt's got your customized training ready for you, right? Here we're kind of snooping in on Jared's account. Now, Jared, we met a long time ago with the Pirates when he was in AA in Altoona. And we were really excited last year to see him move up to the majors and get his first hit. It's kind of like watching your kids grow up. And so we're going to kind of snoop in here on his zone recognition and basically just get a quick look at how that works, because what that will do is it'll tune. It will be a left-handed pitcher in a second, but like what side of the plate the pitcher's on, how fast the speeds of the fastballs that we're looking at, how fast on average the speeds of the sliders he's going to be looking at, and what his goal is in terms of the number of points he's got to shoot for in that round. Where the idea here is that the more points, that means you got to get more correct, more right, and you got to be faster. You get more points for being faster. You get penalties for being too quick and reacting before the ball gets out of the zone. So that first inning, that's the goal that he's shooting for. I'm going to skip over a little bit of tutorial here about how it starts, and we'll jump right into the action. Where right now you're seeing the screen move around because they're using this function where the phone, you can kind of treat it like a VR device. So he's settling there and looking at a pitch and going for it in the zone. Now, in this particular case, we're working on just that bottom part of the zone for Jared. And so that's another key thing with what Coach Hewitt does is he systematically selects which parts of the zone you're showing strengths and weaknesses on and gets you to focus on those, trying to balance pushing weaknesses, but also trying to boost confidence and strength. So it's a subtle balance, really, with any hitter, and we try to algorithmically do that, with Coach Hewitt here. So that's really what the sequence is like for doing custom training on the phone. And the question that prompted this is really this is from Mike in Glendale out in Arizona. He was talking about playing a hitting game on the phone is one thing, but bat in hand is totally different. I think this is Mike. You're writing this. How does training on the phone get to the field? And how long does it take? So I can talk a little bit about the how long does it take part, but from your guys' perspective, how is something that is done just visually? We touched on it a little bit earlier, but like, how could something like that, where you're doing it on this, right? translate to what you do when you actually got bat in hand. You know, it's hot out there. There's the dust. There's everything with being in the game. I mean, from your guys' perspective, you guys both played. Like, what is it that's analogous and what is not analogous?
I mean, you can make the argument that hitting off a tee, because it's a static and stationary thing, doesn't prepare you to see a 94-mile-an-hour ball. But there's value to it in terms of breaking down, slowing down, working on your mechanics, being able to control the rhythm of how you go about, you know, the kinesthetic process. So I think you can make that argument for the same on terms of how you're recognizing and seeing pitches and velocity and isolating it without having to do, you know, to have a bat in your hand and have everything mechanically be involved, separating the two, and then, you know, working on both of them and then getting out there. So it's a tool. It's not going to snap your fingers and make you hit 300, but it's something that will supplement your preparation and help you be prepared a little bit more for each AB and be, you know, consistent in terms of how you're recognizing pitches.
Yeah, I think your hitting mechanics are, you know, your hitting is kind of broken into a few areas. Your hitting mechanics are one thing. Your tracking and your vision is another piece of it, you know. But it probably is. It's as important, if not more important, than anything. Because if you can't track the ball well, I don't care what kind of mechanics you have and how quick your hands are. If you cannot track the ball, you're not going to be able to hit the ball. You know, and the great hitters have had great vision and they've tracked the ball well. So when I was playing, we were always very, you know, wanting to find ways. How could we, you know, enhance our tracking of the pitches? And this is, in my opinion, this is what you're working on. It's again, those skill sets synthesize when you're in the box.
Right. Great. Yeah. No, I mean, that's great. I mean, it's a common question we get a lot because it's just, you know, the feel is totally different. And I thought that was a great question to open up with you guys on. And the timing of it for the event was perfect. So we'll start wrapping up. And for anybody, you know, of course, who does want to, you know, look at using these tools, we have the uHIT Baseball's website in the corner screen above my shoulder. And there you can get the uHIT Plus custom training, however you want to do it on your phone. But you know, I want to thank Hal. I want to thank Brendan for spending some time with us tonight and talking hitting, talking player development, and talking all the new things going on in sports and, you know, how professional sports is recovering from the pandemic. So, you know, excited to have you guys tonight. Hopefully we see you guys again in the future sometime. And good night, everybody, from uHIT Academy Seminar.